Hello students, this is Mrs. Kim. Today we're working on a project called Zentangle Landscape. What is a Zentangle Landscape? Well, let's review some words. Zentangle Landscape is a landscape made of patterns and visual texture. It's made of the repetition and movement of lines. Landscape is a scenery of land. Okay, as opposed to a seascape, which would be a scenery of the sea or the ocean, we're doing the landscape today. Visual texture. Visual texture is texture that we draw instead of feeling with our hands. So we don't feel it, obviously, we're drawing it on paper. And we're also going to cover foreground, middle ground, and background. So as you can see in my Zentangle landscape, I have a landscape drawing that I've done here, and I filled in each section with different and a variety of visual texture and patterns. Okay, so this is what we will do today. So please get a piece of paper, because the first thing we want to do is practice a little bit of visual texture, so that we have some idea before we tackle our project. This will help you avoid making scribble marks later, okay? Because as we add our texture, visual texture to our design, it's a lot of work. And so we need some ideas. And so this reference paper will help us to get some ideas if we're stuck on what we should do. All right, so if you get a piece of paper and if you have a ruler, that would be good. If you need to go get it, please pause the video. With your ruler and pencil, we are going to make a large rectangle shape. Okay, you don't need to measure it because this is just for practice. So I'm going to make 6 boxes here. Divide this rectangle into half, and then draw 2 vertical lines to create 6 boxes. I'm not measuring anything, it's just freehand with a ruler. All right, here are my 6 boxes. So let's explore a little. I'm going to use a marker so that you guys can see it better. I'm going to start with an upside down U shape. Repeating my shape over and over and over again. Again, I'll make another row on top. These can also be called scallops, is what I've heard before. Okay, and you can extend this throughout your whole section. Let's try zigzag. Repeating my zigzag line. You want to remember to repeat your lines when you're filling your Zentangle landscape. Okay? The repetition of your line and visual texture will create a very dynamic Zentangle landscape. All right, how about curly cues? Repeat it. How about some wavy lines? How about some U and upside down U's? And so on and so forth. How about an arch? It's a curved line with a point at the top. And repeat it. How about some crisscross or hash marks? Or wavy lines? How about polka dots? The choices are really endless. You can make up your own as you go as well, okay? So these are just some ideas to get your brain going. All right, now let's start our landscape drawing. With a clean sheet of paper and a pencil, I'm going to start with my foreground. The foreground is here, the bottom part. This is the part that would be closest to the viewer, which is you and me. This is the foreground. This is the middle ground, which is the middle range here. And this is the background, the part which is farthest away from you and me. So we have foreground, middle ground, and background. And usually with the foreground, middle ground, and background, this foreground part is the part that has the most detail and would be the darkest in value because it's closest to the viewer. The middle ground would be mid-range, and then the background would be lightest in value because it is the furthest away from you and very little detail. Okay? Now, starting with a clean sheet of paper and my pencil. This is my whole sheet of paper. It's about an A4 size. And you don't want to use a paper that's too big, okay? I would go with A4 or smaller. So this is halfway, half of my paper right here. I'm going to start my hills at about this point. So if this is half, I'm going down half of that, okay? So from here to here. All right, now this doesn't have to be exactly like mine, just estimate. I'm going to start on the left side and draw a hill that goes down to about here. Then I'll make another hill going up this way. Then another one behind it. Stop here, and I'm going to add an organic freehand bush, okay? Adding some variety in your artwork always makes it more interesting. Then behind that, I will make another hill. And behind that, another one. So these are rolling hills. Then in my background area here, I'm going to add some mountain ranges. I'll add one here on the right side. And then one over here. And then another one over here. Then I will put a sun in the sky, or it could be a moon, whatever you choose. And some clouds. All right, so I have my foreground, middle ground, and background. And I have my demo here. So your next step would be to take a black marker and to outline all of your mountain ranges. But I forgot one thing. Before you do that, I would like for you to add in some grid lines like I've done here. The grid lines will help you to create hills that look more rounded as opposed to being flat. Because when we look at hills, they are rounded. They are 3D in shape. And so that's what we want to create. We want to try to create that rounded look. So I'm adding curved lines to my hills like this. And I'm only going to do it to a few of the hills, not everything. So I've broken them up into sections now, and then each section will get its own visual texture. And my visual texture will go in different directions as well, which I'll explain in a minute. All right, so now you can take your black marker and you can trace everything with a black marker like this. Everything except for your grid lines. Okay, so please go ahead and do that. And then the next thing we're going to do, you can pause the video as you need to work on that. The next thing that we're going to do is fill in our sections with different types of visual texture. And I have used two different markers here. I've used a thicker Sharpie marker here like this. When you use this, you want to turn on your AC or open your window to get some ventilation in because it kind of smells. And I've also used this drawing pen, which is a very fine marker here. It's super, super fine. And so I've used both of them. And so I recommend you do that. So that way you can have some thicker lines and you can have some thinner lines. Now, using my visual texture sample here, I'll put it over here to the side. I'm going to start with my foreground and start filling it with texture, visual texture. So I've already started down here with some of these scallop shapes. So I'm just going to continue with that. Okay, now I'm not going to do the whole thing here with you now. I'm just going to show you something that with these grid lines here, so this is one section here with the grid line, there's another section here. So in this section here, I'm going to change the direction of my visual texture. So let's say this one here, I went straight from left to right. Now this one, I might switch it and do something like this. I'm making these wavy lines, and I could go back in and add more detail if I wanted to, which is what I want to do. I'm going to go back in and add a thick line in between these spaces. You cannot erase marker, so I suggest you go slowly and carefully, okay? So this would be repeated. So this direction changed, it switched. Now it was going from straight horizontally, left to right. Now this one's going at an angle. And now this section, I could switch my angle again. And let's say I wanted to do a zigzag. I started with that, and then I can switch it, switch the direction. Okay, so you get the point, right? For each section, you add a different type of visual texture. And that should give you a very dynamic design. You should end up with something like this. Now, I would ask that you use black and white only and no color for this project, okay? Because we're focusing on the visual texture, and we're also focusing on patterns and repetition of line, which is the important part of this lesson. The repeating of the lines and the visual texture. All right? So I look forward and am excited to see your projects. Have fun with it, and I will see you later. Bye-bye, and thanks for watching.